guys being here. This is a record turnout, believe it or not. But thank you all for coming. Ms. Bethany Allen is here from Ball State. She is the de facto expert. I will defer to her for all things financial aid. Of course, if you guys have questions, you can always reach out to me. However, I hope that we can get any kind of lingering questions answered today, or at least some general info to help out. There is a live stream, so at the end of the presentation, we'll have kind of a Q&A, I guess you could say, including anyone that is on the live stream. Are we live, Rob? Cool. Thank you. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.
I am going to use the microphone since I believe that is how the live stream folks can hear me. So hopefully let me know if I need to be louder, but for you folks, I know you can hear me. So, all right. My name is Bethany Allen. Like he said, I am one of the assistant directors at an office on Ball State's campus called Cardinal Central. We're fairly new. We've been in operation about a year and a half. We're located at the Student Center, and we encompass basically 3 different offices in one. So we are a one-stop shop. We cover financial aid, anything to do with that. We cover the registrar, so anything to do with registration, classes, withdrawing, that kind of thing. And then we also will help students with student financial services, so their e-bill, their account, their charges, their payments, all of that information can be covered in our office at the Student Center in Cardinal Central. So that is where I am from. The presentation this evening is pretty basic. Most of the information does pertain to Ball State specifically, but in general, this is going to be how a lot of universities operate. So just keep that in mind, and I will kind of along the way point out things that are specific to Ball State. But here we go. So the exciting world of financial aid and scholarships. What is financial aid? You may or may not realize, but financial aid is a lot of different things, okay? So, and sometimes what parents or students don't consider financial aid actually is, but it basically consists of funds that help the student and the families pay their costs for college. And that can include both direct costs to Ball State, for instance, anything that you're paying to Ball State, and also indirect costs that you have to consider when you're attending college. You're going to get those insomnia cookies in the middle of the night. You're going to have gas money that you need for your vehicle if you have a vehicle. So all of those costs are able to be paid by different types of financial aid. This kind of demonstrates, or kind of illustrates, I should say, that for whatever your financial situation is, whether you absolutely already have planned out every dollar for dollar how you're going to pay for your college, or if you have no idea how you're going to pay for your costs, there is financial aid for 97% of new first-year students that's available. You're going to most likely qualify for some sort of financial aid. So that kind of translates into 4 out of 5 students, which is again a high percentage, is going to qualify for scholarships and grants specifically. And I'll give a little more detail about why that's important when we're talking about scholarships and grants. And on average, those scholarships and grants can come up to about $12,000 a year, which is a fairly good chunk. That number is probably a little lower than it actually is now because these figures are from about a year ago. But $12,000 will cover about a semester's worth at Ball State, and that's including tuition, fees, and housing and food. It is a little bit more than that now per semester, but that's a half of a year college. And overall, there is a lot of money out there that is ready to be given to students. $290 million, that includes federal aid, state aid, institutional aid, private scholarships, and any kind of other aid that comes in. That's a large amount of money. So, like I said earlier, there's a lot of different types of financial aid. There are 2 different types specifically. Gift aid, obviously, That's the best kind of aid, because that's the kind of aid that you don't have to pay back. It's a gift. It's given to you with no expectations of it being repaid or paid back. So that includes your scholarships. That could be scholarships directly from, for instance, Ball State or any college that you might attend. It can also include private scholarships, or what we call outside scholarships. So those would be scholarships from, say, a future employer, a current employer, a business out there that just wants to give your student some money to go towards their school, or other scholarships that your student has applied for and been awarded. Okay, other types of gift aid would be grants. So that would include federal aid, like the federal Pell Grant. It could include state aid, like the 21st Century Scholars Award, or the O'Bannon, the Frank O'Bannon Award. That's also a state scholarship, or grant, sorry. And then there's also institutional grants. So for instance, Ball State has something called the Ball State Grant available to students that they may be eligible for. And I will just put a plug for the 21st Century Scholars Award Program. At Ball State in Cardinal Central, we have our own dedicated specialist who's available to work with those students one-on-one to help them interpret the 21st Century Scholarship, to make sure they're meeting those requirements and expectations. So we do have that available here. And then there's also military programs available for students. If their parent was or is in the military, they may qualify for other military benefits that will help cover their tuition and fees. Or if the student is in the military, there may also be additional scholarships or aid available for them. So that covers the gift aid side of financial aid, the better part of financial aid, but we also do consider a couple of other types of financial aid, and that's self-help aid. So that would be your loans. A lot of students and parents will say, that's not aid, that's not helping me. But a federal loan or a private loan is actually aid, because it's paying for your college now, and it's a way for you to get that education that you want, and then you can pay that back later. So there's loans, and then there's also the federal work study. So based on your student's FAFSA information, they may or may not be eligible for a federal work study. What that basically is funds from the federal government that if your student gets a job on campus, whatever campus that may be, and they earn their hourly wage and they work their hours each week, they get that federal work study money paid directly to them. And then they use that, those funds, to do whatever they need. They can pay it on their bill if they choose to, or they can go buy groceries, or get other things that they may need for their education, books or supplies. So that's just a little bit of the difference between gift aid and self-help aid. Okay, so this QR code you can scan, or you can just go to our website, which is bsu.edu, and if you just type in scholarship calculator on the search bar, it's going to take you to this same page. This is a good page if you are interested in more Ball State related scholarships. It's going to list all of our scholarships that we offer, and after the presentation I will pull up our webpage and show you where you can find a link to some additional outside scholarship search engines or search websites to help you find those $500, $1,000, $1,500, those scholarships out there, and they do add up. So this is a good place to start for that information. I did go ahead and list on here just some of the bigger names that I've kind of ran across and heard about, and students have kind of talked about a little bit for free scholarship search websites. Big Future, the careeronestop.org. FastWeb is another big one, and Peterson's Scholarship Search, and the scholarship search that's provided by Sally Mae. So those are all fairly good websites to check out. We know they're reputable. You're not going to, have to pay a fee to get a scholarship. That is a red flag. So if you're scholarship searching and it says to apply, please pay $25, don't do that. It's most likely not a valid scholarship. You should never have to pay upfront to receive a scholarship. And then this is also, if you go to ballstatebsu.edu website, if you put in additional scholarship opportunities in the search bar, it'll take you to this page that lists even more websites that you can go on and look for private scholarships or outside scholarships. Okay, so where do you start? How do you figure out or find out what your student is eligible for? And that's where the absolute most favorite thing in my life, the FAFSA, comes into play, right? It is the free application for federal student aid. It is located at studentaid.gov, so that will become your favorite site ever. And I'm right there with you. I get to file that this year. My student gets to file that this year for the first time, so it will be fun. But it's fairly, so this time around, the 25-26 FAFSA, which is what most of your students most likely will be starting in the fall of 2025. You're going to be doing that 25-26 FAFSA. It's been through the mill one round already. So last year, the 24-25 FAFSA, which is the current one we're under right now, was an experimental type of situation. They called it the better FAFSA, and it really is better than the previous version, but it still has a lot of development to go. So this is the second year that it's being used. There's so many less questions asked on it than there was previously, just streamlining it a little bit. So that is where you're gonna go to file your FAFSA. It is available now. They told us December 1st, and they actually opened it up about a week before that or so. Didn't let us know. We don't have the inside scoop on that sort of thing, so we're right there with you. But studentaid.gov is where you go for that. Just a few tips about the FAFSA. It is free to file every year, so you want to do that every year your student is in college. I do put a plug in for Ball State, and that is our code, because on your application, or on your student's application, I should say, they can list up to, I believe, 10 colleges that they want to send their information to, and that's perfectly fine to do that. But our code is 001786, and you can just type that right in. And generally, the FAFSA is required for most aid programs, so it's a good rule to just go ahead and file that, even if you don't necessarily expect to be eligible for federal aid or state aid. It's still good to have that on file, because there may be a scholarship that wants to know that you filed your FAFSA. They may not want to even have access to the information, but they just want to know that you did file it. So it's up to you, but we recommend it. And then I did put on here April 15th of 2025. That is the priority deadline. And what I mean by priority deadline is that if you want the maximum amount of possible eligible aid for your student, get your FAFSA filed by that date. And it doesn't necessarily mean we've gotten it by April 15th, but as long as your student goes on studentaid.gov and files their FAFSA and it reads submitted by April 15th, then they are good. That's the deadline for that priority for the highest amount of aid that you might be eligible for. You can still file it after April 15th. You can file it almost until the end of the next year, until April 2026. But you're most likely, a lot of those funds are already going to have been used and debited out and may not be available. So we like to plug April 15th, that great tax day. Go ahead and have that FAFSA done. This is also a QR code that's pretty handy. Now, when you do scan this and it takes you to that webpage, you can't book an appointment right now. There's none available. We just finished up these virtual appointments, today, actually. But there will be additional virtual one-on-one appointments available to anybody that wants to book one, starting mid-January. So this is a good QR code to have handy, or go to this webpage and go ahead and favorite it or earmark it for later. Because this is where you'll actually meet with somebody from Cardinal Central, maybe myself, and we can have a 15-minute conversation at your convenience, from your home or wherever, and answer any specific questions you might have. We also do not limit you, so if you need more than one, that's perfectly fine. We don't charge extra. We just ask that if you do make an appointment, that you keep it, or if you are unable to, just send us an email and give us a heads up, because it's never fun to wait and nobody shows up. It's sad. But these are available for any student. You don't even have to be a Ball State student. You don't have to be admitted or applied to Ball State. You can do this, anybody can do this. So we will provide information about Ball State, but anybody can have a virtual appointment with us. So I like to try to give parents an idea of what should I be focused on? You know, what are some things that I should be doing? Because I know a lot of parents are worried that we're missing something, or we're not doing something we should be doing. So this is just kind of a little overview of over the next, until August of next year, here's a few things you can make sure you're doing. In December, obviously, you can get started on that FAFSA. You don't necessarily have to complete it, but go ahead and get it started. At least get logged in and get your FSA ID created so that you can log in and work on your FAFSA. And that's for the student and also for the parent or parents. So if you have, the student will definitely want to get started with, it is their application. But the parents are involved as far as signing and consenting to their part of it. So it is important that everybody has their information ready to go. And then I kind of look at, enjoy your Christmas break. It's your last Christmas before you're sending your kids off to college the next fall. So enjoy that time off together, and don't stress out too much, if you can, about anything financial aid related, okay? And then come January and March, it's a very good prime time to start searching for those scholarships, or continue searching for those scholarships, looking at any websites you can, getting those applications in, reaching out to any kind of employer that might be, I tell students, what do you want to study? They'll say architecture, and I'll say, okay, well, do you know any architecture firms that you intend to maybe intern at, or you would like to work at eventually? Reach out to them, give them a call, just a cold call, and say, hey, I'm a student going into architecture. Do you guys have any scholarships, or do you have any money you'd like to give me? You'd be surprised how many $500 or $1,000 scholarship checks come in. So then in April, particularly at Ball State, we have Admitted Student Day on April 4th coming up. So you probably, if you are in the process of coming to Ball State, you may have already gotten notice of that, but that's coming up in April. Again, I put that FAFSA priority deadline there on April 15th. And then in May, obviously, you're gonna have a high school student graduating, and it is important once your student graduates, go ahead and send that final high school transcript with the graduation date onto hopefully Ball State, but wherever you go, they're gonna need that information. That final high school transcript is super important because it is a very important piece so that we can process financial aid. There are a lot of times we can't process aid in August because we still don't have a final high school transcript from May. So that's why I pointed out it's very important. And then in July, it's a really fun time on campus here at Ball State. We have orientation every day. And this previous year, or I should say this year, 2024, it was a 2-day program. I assume that's what's gonna be happening next year, but that's when you would come to Ball State for a couple of days, and we are gonna give you so much information. You'll be exhausted. You won't wanna ever come back, but you'll have to because move-in day is in August, and that's when classes start in August of 2026. So that's just a little bit of what are some things you can be working on over the next few months. And I will also add, particularly Ball State, we hope to start getting FAFSA information from the feds in January. We're hoping to start getting that information, and then it takes us, 4 to 8 weeks to process it and get actual aid offers out to students in late February, early March. That is what they just told me today is the plan. So then you will have an aid offer in hand, and it will tell you what aid you're eligible for, what aid your student is eligible for. So that's the goal. Don't quote me on it or take that, to heart for sure, but we're hoping for late February, early March. We'll have those aid offers to students. And for first-time freshman students, you get a letter in the mail in a nice big envelope that says offer. So hopefully you'll get that soon, or in February or March. And we will communicate with students too if there's a delay, of course. So that kind of wraps up the informational part of what I have to offer you. Aside from, this is our phone number, pretty easy to remember, just 765-285-2222. That is our email, cardinalcentral@bsu.edu. And that is our entryway there at the Student Center right across from the Tattly and the Starbucks. If you stop over, we have a system called Wait While. You can come in, put your name in, put your phone number in, and go grab a coffee. And then we will call you, text you, call your name when we're ready to help you. Prospective parents and students are welcome to come to our office. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Friday morning we do have a meeting, so come in after 9:30, but you are welcome to, we are open, so you can come in. And we're available, and we're here to help you navigate financial aid and all of the wonderful things that students, basically, we support the student with the business of being a student. That's our job. So that concludes my presentation. I did want to pop onto our website just to show you, how do I make it bigger? Okay. This is our basic website, bsu.edu. I'm sure you're all familiar probably, but if you put in scholarship calculator, boom, maybe. I'm not familiar with Max. I'm a Dell gal, so this is different for me. But it's just that top search. This is the scholarship calculator. Specifically, you are going to put in the GPA of your student and also your SAT or ACT scores if you have them, and it basically will compute out, I don't know how to scroll down, sorry. Oh, 2 fingers? Okay, yeah, so very handy. Oh, nice. If you put in a 4.0 and an SAT score of, like, let's say 1450, you then can tell what your residency is, and it will tell you what your results are, or it should. Well, that should get you, okay, I didn't put in 4.0. Here we go. Okay, so for instance, a 4.0 GPA and a 1450 on your SAT is gonna get you $5,500 a year from Ball State. So totaling up a $22,000 scholarship for 4 years. Pretty good, fairly good amount. Also, if you go back and you click on this second listed, financial aid and scholarships, let's see. Sorry, technical difficulties. Actually, click on that one, the third one. Trying to show you where, there it is, the search tools, where you can begin searching, and then you can scroll down, and that's where you can click on free scholarships and additional scholarship opportunities for sure. But here's where all those websites are listed in case you want to explore those for more outside scholarships. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that concludes the information I have for you. Do we have any people that want to ask questions?
There is a question in the chat.
Okay.
Someone asks, how do we deal with financial aid for divorced parents if a
So with the custodial parent of the student would be the one who is filing, or the student would file the FAFSA, and the FAFSA is going to ask you your household information. So you're going to put that custodial parent's information and name, and then the FAFSA will pull that parent's information from the IRS, essentially. So you don't even have to enter in tax information. It's basically going to pull that in for that custodial parent. It's not going to ask for the non-custodial parent's income information in the FAFSA because they are non-custodial. They do not live in the student's household. There's also an extra little piece to that that I'll expand on. If there is a step-parent in the household with the student, and custodial parent is married or remarried, right, to this new spouse, that spouse's income is included in the household income. So they are considered part of the household, and that information does have to go onto the FAFSA. That's a federal regulation, that's a federal rule. As far as how to handle a non-custodial parent that's not willing to pay, honestly, that's not something that we can help with much. I would probably recommend, they might speak to an attorney, would be my recommendation on that. We do not enforce who pays what. Honestly, when it comes to like court orders and things of that nature as well, we will go by what comes to us on the FAFSA. That is the student's household information. If there's other things going on outside of the financial information, like court orders or this parent's supposed to do this or that, we're not the enforcers of those court orders. So we are not able to assist with that particular kind of situation. But definitely set up an appointment with us. We can talk more details one-on-one as well. So that would be a suggestion I would give as well. Go ahead and meet with us. Anybody else got a question? Okay.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
On the calculator, is there less money provided if you have lower SAT scores?
Yes, and you can play with that calculator to...
Or like if you just don't put it in, if you just put none?
If you put in A, it probably is not going to read out a result. But that does not mean that you or your student may not qualify for a merit scholarship, because Ball State happens to be test optional. So it just increases your chances of getting a merit scholarship if you do submit your SAT or ACT scores. So you can play with the calculator a little bit, like a 3.5. Yeah, if you hit none, it's going to say not eligible. If you want to find out what's the minimum SAT that a student can have, let's say, I don't know, 1,200 maybe, sorry, and say they're an Indiana resident, not eligible, so you can just bump it up 50, see if that makes a difference. That's what I've done for students in my office, but sometimes the score is just out of their range. Or okay, so a 3.5 GPA with a minimum of 1350 would get you the Ball State Scholars Award. If we did 1300, which I skipped over that, it would not get you anything. So a difference of 50 points there can make a bit of a difference. Yeah, 13.25 doesn't count. So 1350, it looks like, is probably that minimum for at least a $4,000 a year scholarship. Part of the information that you give to admissions when you are applying to Ball State, so that high school transcript that you're having sent over, they're going to look at that, and even if there's no scores on there, if they feel the student if the student meets a certain GPA, can definitely get a student most likely a merit scholarship, but they're gonna consider other information too. If there's any extracurriculars, or if there's any AP classes, or if there's any dual credit courses, that kind of thing on a transcript can help qualify a student for a scholarship. And then also, a lot of departments on campus, you can meet with them here at Ball State, and they may have additional scholarships that your student can apply for, specifically from that department. And you had a second question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it possible that students might qualify for both the gift and the self-help?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, there are a lot of students that have multiple types of aid. So I'll give you an example. Ball State employees, if they're full-time and meet the eligibility requirements, do get fee remission for their dependents and their spouses. So if you have a student coming to Ball State, you can get fee remission, which is a fairly large percentage of tuition and fees, or tuition taken off of the account, or cost taken off of the account. And then they might qualify for some federal Pell Grant, so that would get applied to the account too. And a student might also be offered loans. So yes, you absolutely can stack different types of aid. Now, it is often very dependent on what those different types of aid are, or the amounts of those different types of aid are. But for the most part, they are stackable. Some are going to be refundable, which means if there's an overage, it gets sent back to the student. Some are not refundable. They will only allow it to be applied to the tuition, or to the fees, or to the room or board, the housing and the food costs. So scholarships and grants can be very different as far as what they will cover and if they're refundable.
Could you expand a little bit more on that idea of refundable and what that means with the scholarships and grants?
Right. So for example, the federal Pell Grant. If you complete your FAFSA and you're found eligible for the federal Pell Grant, and say you have another scholarship come in, or another type of financial aid come in, or say you're a student living at home. When you're a student living at home and you're commuting to Ball State, for example, your costs are gonna be a lot less because you're only gonna be paying tuition and fees, right? You're not living on campus, so you're not paying for housing. You most likely don't need a meal plan, although it can be pretty handy and convenient to have. But say your bill for the fall semester is only about $5,000, and you decide to, or you qualify for the federal Pell Grant. The federal Pell Grant is $7,396 a year. So half of that would apply to your bill, and then say you are eligible for a loan and you decide to take out your loan. If you take out the full amount that's offered to a freshman student, which is $5,500 in subsidized and unsubsidized loans for the year, if you took if you took the full amount of loans for the whole year, it's gonna pay $2,750 on to your balance. So half of the $7,396, which I can't calculate that in my head, but it's about $3,500, right? That's gonna go towards your balance, and then your loan's gonna pay towards your balance. Both of those types of aid are refundable. So whatever that overage is for that semester gets refunded back to the student. Typically, we recommend the student set up direct deposit. We have a direct deposit on our website where a student can put in a routing number and account number of their checking or savings, and then once the aid pays their bill is zero, the overage gets sent back to the student. And it's usually the Friday before classes start, if everything's running smoothly.
And then once that money is in the student's account, do they need to be responsible for making sure it's only spent in certain ways that the scholarship grants allow?
Typically, well, I shouldn't say typically, After a refund is issued to a student, we do not track it. It is their money to do what they want. So they can spend it on whatever is needed. Generally, what they spend it on is honest to goodness needs that they have. We have students that will, they'll take out the loan specifically because they know they need a newer car, or they need to buy something, you know, a computer or some sort of supply that they need. So we don't track that. Yeah. We might suggest, try this, or maybe you want to hang on to that and put a little bit in your savings, but they're only suggestions because we cannot control what the student does after that.
You don't tell them that spring break fund.
We don't tell them that it's a spring break fund. You know, we try to guide in the right direction, but we can only do so much. Another question?
I have a general question.
Okay.
Can you explain, since parents, if they're trying to pay bills or interact for their students, do they need to do anything special to the college?
Yes. So this would be information that we would get more in depth with you at, say, Admitted Student Day or orientation, but we are a small group this evening. So yes, at Ball State particularly, and I can't speak to other colleges on this particular thing, except for proxy. If you've heard the word proxy, you can set up proxy, or the student sets up proxy, and that will allow us at Ball State to share information with whomever that proxy is. So we tell the students two things: set up proxy as soon as you have access to your Ball State account, and set up authorized payer. Proxy is a federally regulated rule, okay? It's called FERPA, F-E-R-P-A. I don't know off the top of my head what that stands for. Federal something. Protection Act. Yes, Federal Education.
Right to Privacy Act.
Yes, Right to Privacy Act, thank you. FERPA. So once a student becomes an admitted student to a college, we have to protect their information. They can go into their self-service banner once they have access, and they go to proxy management, and they add whoever they want to be as proxy. So they can put in a parent, they can put in friend, they can put in aunt, uncle, whoever is their support system. They put in their name, their relationship, their email address, and also a passphrase. That's the key piece. So once they put all that information in, they can check mark the boxes next to what we are allowed to speak to them or speak to the proxy about. And once they save that in their self-service banner, they can change it, adjust it, delete it, whatever they want to do at any time. But every time a parent or a proxy calls in, we are going to ask you, what's that Ball State student's ID number? What is your name? And what is the proxy passphrase? And we get some funny ones. So be prepared. When your student puts in that passphrase, it can be anything they choose. And as long as you get it correct, we will make sure that we answer your questions, depending on what boxes they check too. Students who are pretty informed will choose just to talk about financial aid, the charges, the bills, but not the grades. Okay, that's fine, that's your decision. Usually we just recommend check them all so your parent can help you. But that's how you would find information. Now, I'm sorry, I'm getting to your point now. How can a parent make a payment or see the e-bill account? So the student also has to set up authorized payer. That's the other thing that we kind of push them to look into setting up. But they go to their e-bill account, which again is on their self-service banner under the student tab, and then they click on e-bill, and that's going to open them up to their e-bill account. They're going to, we show a whole thing about this at Admitted Student Day and also orientation, where we walk you through all the different screens. But they will essentially go to their overview, and they'll see add authorized payer. They put in their parents' information or whoever they want to make payments and see their e-bill, the email address. That sends an email invite to that person, that parent, that authorized payer, and then you set up your username and password, and you can log in at that point, see their bill, see their statements, make payments, all of the things. So authorized payer and proxy. You can go to our website and search for those two words or two items and find all this information on there. We also have a guest payer option too. We like to tell family members, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, they can go online and make a payment on the student's account at any time as well without having a username and password. All they need is the student's name, the last name, the Ball State ID number, and then they just put in how much they want to pay and make the payment. Online, you can make payments using your savings account or checking account. That's free. There's no extra charge to make an ACH payment, they call it. If you use a credit card to make a payment on a student account or a debit card, there is a 2.75% convenience fee, so it's always easier just to put in that routing number and account number to make a payment. You can also use Apple Pay. I'm not familiar. I think you can also do wire transfers. There's international payment options, but you can go to our website, type in make a payment, and it'll give you all those options. Yeah?
What about like the 529 accounts and accessing that? Is that
Okay.
something, does that come to their checking accounts and then you pay, or is that?
It can be done different ways, okay? So once you are an authorized payer and you have access to the e-bill, one of the payment options is clicking on your 529 plan. There's only 2 or 3 plans listed for Indiana, I believe, specific Indiana 529 plans that are on there. If it's listed, you can choose it. It will ask for your 529 account information, and then you can transfer the funds that way. There's a $10 fee to do it that way, but you can if your plan is listed. If your plan is not listed, you do just have to contact your 529 plan person and let them know where you want the money sent. Typically, we have most of our 529 plan payments come in the form of a check in the mail, and then we get those and we apply them to the student's account manually. So that's usually how they send 529 plan payments. Yes?
So I heard something about your FAFSA as early as you can, then you're also saying before April 15th. Does it matter if I file it in January versus March?
Nope, anytime before April 15th is perfectly fine. You don't get more funds if it's done in January and less funds in March. It's just flat out, finish it by April 15th.
But we can get notification as far as what they're offering earlier? I mean, what's the...
So, not necessarily. I mean, if you do your FAFSA December or January, we'll get that information pretty quickly. If you wait until, once you do your FAFSA, we typically will, once it's January or after, we will start to get that information on a regular basis, like on a weekly basis. We'll continue to get more and more FAFSA information. So typically, if you say you did it March 1st, we should have it by mid to late March, that information, and we would be able to then take a week or two to provide an aid offer at that time. It's not an instant process, and I'm kind of over, it could probably happen faster than that, but just to be safe, we say it usually takes 2 to 3 weeks to get FAFSA information, and then another couple weeks to get an aid offer to you.
That aid offer will vary depending on colleges. It's not like if I apply to Ball State versus IU, you're not going to get the same aid offer.
Correct. Yes, aid offers are specific to the college, yeah. Yeah, and we do not, so your aid offer that comes in, like you said, from another school, IU or wherever, it could look completely different than the aid offer that you get from Ball State. And we don't price match. I know we've had, and that's a fair question, but if you get offered a certain amount of aid somewhere else, we go off of your admittance information, we go off of your FAFSA, and what we offer is our best offer. So we don't undercut other people or try to price match.
So
or scholarship match, I should say. Yeah. Yes?
A question about, like, when you get the aid offer, does it kind of indicate what income on there is, that needs to go on your future tax returns, like in terms of, that counts toward money received that would be taxable? Is that-
Not so much.
Okay.
So the aid offer, and maybe I'm not
So
understanding.
I was surprised my first year of college, how much I had to pay in taxes from when I received monies for, so I just was trying to think.
Yeah. The aid offer that you get from us is going to list any merit scholarships that your student's been offered, any federal aid that your student's eligible for, state aid, and then also loans are gonna be listed on there. That's the only thing that's gonna show up on your aid offer.
Just to verify, because I've had some parents ask, just because loans are offered does not mean that their student is automatically signed up for it.
Correct, absolutely not. Every student who completes a FAFSA who is still eligible for loans, because there is a limit on how much in loans you can get as an undergrad dependent student, you're offered those loans. They are not automatically accepted. The student actually has to take, for the first time around, they have to take 3 steps, fairly a little bit involved steps. They have to go to their self-service banner, accept the loans, submit that, and then your first time around, as a borrower, you have to go back to studentaid.gov website, and the student has to complete 2 things: the master promissory note, which takes about 10 minutes to complete online, and also the loan entrance counseling, which is about a 20-minute sit through it and read everything under the sun about loans tutorial. Once they do those 2 things online, it links up in our system, and about a week later, their loans will start to process and apply to their account. So you're offered loans, but you absolutely do not have to accept them. We do not push students into using loans. We just make it clear that that's an option that is available if you want to utilize it.
Are you able to speak at all about federal loans versus private loans?
A little bit. Federal loans, basically, they're federal loans, so they're more secure. They are a flat interest rate. Generally, that interest rate is lower than most private student loan companies. There is a limit, though, to what is offered to a student each year in federal loans. So for an undergrad dependent student, they're offered $5,500 in loans their freshman year. They're offered $6,500 their sophomore year, and they're offered $7,500 their junior and senior year. So if that is not enough in loans for the student and they want to get additional loans on top of their federal loans, they can go look for a private student loan as well. So you can do a combination of both types of loans. Private loans, the only thing I can speak to on those are you got to determine which company works for you. If you're comfortable with the terms and the conditions and the interest rate, then that may be a better option for the student. Yeah?
How do scholarships, that was something that was my kid, how do scholarships work if your kid ends up being there more than 4 years? Like,
So,
various things you folks offer, or the federal, or
particularly at Ball State, generally, if you are not an architecture student or in the nursing program, which generally are a 5-year program, then you only get 8 semesters of the scholarships offered by Ball State. That's a general rule. If there is a semester where you don't use a scholarship, say a student decides to study abroad and they don't use a semester's worth of a scholarship, they can use that and, expand another semester or take another semester and use it for that semester. But the key is you only get 8 semesters unless you're in a 5-year program. Yeah. And then the federal Pell Grant, if your student is eligible for the federal Pell Grant, there is a maximum amount that a student can get in the federal Pell Grant. So If they are getting to their senior year and they need another semester or two to complete their degree, they may not be eligible for the Pell Grant that last semester or two. It's impossible for me to give you specific figures on what it would be very specific to the student. But yeah, the goal is for the students to graduate in 4 years or less.
Do you know if that 8-semester maximum on the scholarships from the school, do you know if that's pretty much the case with all colleges?
I don't know that, to be honest. I am not sure what other colleges do. Yeah. Any other questions? Did we at least all learn one thing new? Make it worth our time? Okay. Do you have another question, Will?
No questions, but I did, can I just make a quick statement? According to Indiana law, every public school student has to file the FAFSA. It is no longer, if they're not college bound, they have to file the FAFSA. The only way around that is if you go through a formal opt-out process, in which I had said it in my email, but you have to send me an email because we have to have formal paperwork that I can then show the state of Indiana that you as parent understand what FAFSA is, your student understands, and you do not want to file it. I don't know. It was implemented last year. Another way to track us, I don't know, maybe call me crazy. However, that is a new law, so make sure that you guys are, and it's before the April 15th deadline. So make sure if you or anyone watching, if your student or you are not interested in that, please contact me. I'll have to have some paperwork filled out. And then the other point I just wanted to point out, it's specifically Ball State Admitted Students Day, but I don't know if you recognized that day is not just for your student, it is for you as a parent as well. And while this is specific to Ball State, most Indiana colleges are going to offer something similar to where your student goes off and does things that are fun college things, and you sit through more financial aid meetings and other things that you can take notes on. But I do think it is helpful. I would just recommend for whatever college your student chooses, find that opportunity, because you will have an abundance of information, or at least the resources that you can ask specific questions related to the college of, is it only 8 semesters that our financial aid will cover? So I would just remind you guys of that. Orientations, I think, are mainly more so students, but I feel like there is maybe parents, activities for the parent as well. So don't just think, well, we'll drop you off, have fun, we'll see you later. Stick around. There is opportunities for you to also learn a bit, or ask the important questions that your student may forget because they're so excited about their new opportunity. Those are the 2 things that I wanted to throw in there. Make sure one last time there's no other online questions. So I think,
Okay.
Unless you all have anything else, I appreciate you for coming out. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for joining us. If you do have further questions, I believe you hang out for just a bit longer. It's up one-on-one. Of course, you can always send those questions over to me as well. If you're thinking, if your students like Ball State's off the table, but they have some other schools and you're not sure, feel free to reach out and I can help you find the contacts to at least try to send out some emails or phone calls.